So there's a super interesting story out, which is that Spotify is in a basically civil war internally over having Joe Rogan on their podcasting site and their platform. And it's because they consider him to be transphobic. So what's going on is, it says Spotify is facing a heated internal struggle with employees over whether it should host episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience that some staffers described as transphobic. Vice reported that CEO Daniel Ek addressed staff concerns at an all-hands meeting on Wednesday. Quote, "In the case of Joe Rogan, a total of 10 meetings have been held with various groups and individuals to hear their respective concerns." Vice said its sources shared questions that had been submitted for the Q&A portion of the meeting. The questions, which shortened the name of the podcast to JRE, suggest that friction is building between Spotify's leadership and its staff over the podcast. Why has Spotify chosen to ignore Spectrum ERG's guidance about transphobic content in the JRE catalog? One question said, referring to an internal employee representation group. Many LGBTQAI+ ally Spotifyers feel unwelcome and alienated because of leadership's response in JRE conversations. What is your message to those employees? Another read. Sources told Vice that Spotify staff highlighted one episode in which Rogan interviewed Abigail Schreier about her book, Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. Quote, "Joe Rogan and the episode in question have been reviewed extensively," X said in the All Hands, according to a report. "The fact that we aren't changing our position doesn't mean we aren't listening. It just means we made a different judgment call." Eck also told employees not to leak to the media if they want to be included in company conversations about moderation. "If we can't have open, confidential debates, we will have to move those discussions to closed doors." It says, this week, Rogan made headlines after hosting an episode where he recounted a joke in which he made the baseless suggestion that Caitlyn Jenner's trans identity was somehow inspired by the Kardashian women. Jenner and LGBTQ rights groups, the Human Rights Campaign, condemned the segment. Rogan, who has 9.5 million subscribers, signed an all exclusive deal with Spotify. Back and forth indicates Spotify will increasingly have to deal with moderation issues not dissimilar to those at social media companies like Facebook and Twitter. So, honestly, if both parties, that being Joe Rogan and Spotify, did not see this coming, they're both actual idiots and actual morons. And the reason why I say that is because this could have been seen coming from a mile away. And this in terms of both Joe Rogan and Spotify. So Spotify should have been able to expect this, knowing the kind of crazy stuff that Joe Rogan says. Joe Rogan has no sort of filter. He just kind of goes on and says whatever. He has guests that come on and say whatever. And so Spotify should have known that just by a basic look at their at his content and what he does and his guests. And so it does seem to be confirmed that they have removed those podcasts that were questionable that we all saw. They have removed those and they're not going to put that on. And I guess those are going to, I don't know whether those are going to be deleted off his YouTube, which is, I've heard that they're deleting all the podcasts off the YouTube once this goes into full effect. Now, on the flip side, Joe Rogan is also a moron here, but honestly, I think he's not an idiot. I think he's a sellout is what it is. So he's already making a ton of money, but they offer him the $100 million bag. And I guess for him, money is everything. Because he was all crying about free speech and all this stuff. Bro, you're literally going to Spotify. Do you have any idea the ramifications of that? And honestly, after reading this, it's more and more indicative because I just recorded a video about Joe Rogan and the fires and how he had to apologize for his dumb lie about how leftists are setting the fires. But what it tells me is Spotify probably put pressure on him, or he knew about the situation already impending at Spotify, and so he took it upon himself to do that because he's like, fuck, I don't want to get in more trouble. But you had to know this was going to happen, right? You had to know this was going to happen. When you exclusively sign with a platform, especially like Spotify, you have to know that you can't necessarily just go on and say all this crazy stuff. That was one of the benefits. That was the biggest benefit about having the Joe Rogan Experience, having it on YouTube and having all this stuff. You have much more freedom. You can kind of just go off the riff and just do whatever. I feel like that's why people like the Joe Rogan podcast. Now, obviously, Spotify is making a really tough decision here. It's tough for them because it ended up raising their shares a lot when he had signed with the podcast, with Spotify. their shares went up a lot. They made a lot of money off that signing, so it was a big deal for them. So that's why it's so difficult for them to make their decision. But there's obviously going to be, there's probably lefties who work at Spotify, or, people who are socially liberal or whatever. And they're probably there and they're worried about this, and they're sort of talking about this whole thing. How could you not see this coming? And so I know that he had to have known about this. And the fact that he knew about this and he did it all for the money tells me that this guy is a fucking sellout, dude. So it's really interesting to see this unfold. I think that Spotify will probably eventually have to do something, but Joe Rogan is probably he's either already regretting his decision, or he's saying, "Hey man, I'm getting $100 million bag. I don't have to pay a state tax because now I'm moving to Texas. Where's my residency now? So I'm gonna get to keep more of the money." And he's just chilling on a yacht or something like that. I mean, hey, his fans are certainly in disarray over this, but sorry, you can't really claim him to be your sort of martyr when you know that in exchange for all that money, he knew he was going to have to sort of step on shells and, watch where he's going more. So he can't even really be considered a martyr because he knew what he was doing and the incentive was money. But a lot of stuff going down with Joe Rogan and Spotify right now.